Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today I'm going to show you how to build a vocal chain from scratch. I'm going to do this with Waves plugins, but you can follow the steps for whatever plugin you like to use. And I'm going to try my best to break down the process as best as I can. Let's jump right into this real quick. This will be our starting point. If we do a quick listen, you will see that you can basically hear the vocals. And I carry you for my door. Right? I gave you the best of me. Just without any effects at this stage. But one thing that is very important to note at this stage is you pretty much have to do your gain staging and just your rough balancing to where you can actually hear the vocals in the music. That's how I like to do it, at least. And I typically like to put the Autotune directly on the track itself. So we have just the Autotune. Let's jump to the chain real quick. First thing I like to start with when I'm building a vocal chain is noise suppressor. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. But from my experience of mixing a lot of songs and considering the fact that people don't normally record in booth anymore, we need a noise suppressor. So that's what we have here. And I love the Clarity VX Pro. This is my go-to noise suppressor. The idea whenever I'm using this is just to make sure I'm just cutting enough noise to where I don't typically affect the quality of the vocals. This is what that would sound like. And I carry you for my door. You see, I would start to lose some clarity, right? And technically, this recording doesn't have noise per se. I recorded this song myself in this studio, so a bit controlled. But there's also something I like to do here, which is go into the advanced controls and do some more processing from say 10K and up to catch some of those sharpness in the vocals even before I proceed down the rest of the chain. This is what I'm targeting essentially. Let me solo that. Might not be very audible for this particular song, but those harsh frequencies from 10K and up, I just come here and try to squash a little bit more of that before I proceed down the chain. So let's see if we can hear any difference from this simple processing without it. And I carry you for my door. And then with it. And I carry you for my door. So the effects is very subtle, but it's definitely there. So the next plugin I like to introduce into the vocal chain is an EQ. And for this stage, I prefer to use a dynamic EQ because what I'm doing here is targeting resonant frequencies. I'm going to leave a link here to a video on dynamic EQs so that you can see how I actually do this from scratch. But essentially what I do here is just listen for any annoying frequencies in the vocals that I don't like, and then I take them out. For example, we do have some here. Let me solo that real quick. There's a bit of boxiness, nasal sound there that I felt like I did not need for the song, so I took it out. If you're not used to doing this, one very simple way to do this is just to increase the gain of that frequency and sweep across the performance. And then just listen, you know. And then you just take out what you don't like. Again, because this is a dynamic EQ, we are not just attenuating. We are using the compressor settings to set a threshold, attack, a release time, so that's a range, and that will pull back the frequencies when it exceeds our threshold. And I carry you for my door. As you can see right there. So that's basically it. And then the next plugin I introduced into the vocal chain is a de-esser. Basically, what I'm doing with these first 3 plugins is essentially fix problems that I notice in the vocals before I proceed down the rest of the vocal chain. For example, if I don't take out those resonant frequencies, when I get to compression, I'll be boosting all of those problems as well, which will make the mix sound crappy. That's the idea behind this first 3 stages, is to fix problems. I am just using Waves for this demonstration, but you can use whatever de-esser you want, whatever EQ you like, whatever brand. Essentially, it's the same process. Do you understand what I'm saying? Let's bypass the de-esser and hear the difference without it. I gave you the best of me, now are you the best for me? Okay, hear the sibilance there, so let's put that back on. I gave you the best of me, now are you the best for me? I am currently doing up to like -7 dB of attenuation here. Sometimes I would pull less. At this stage, really, you don't want to do too much de-essing, except you feel like maybe the record needs that. And typically, I will set the de-esser to capture sibilance from anywhere between 3K and up. Sometimes I will extend down to 4K, as I've done here. Very simple, very straightforward. Again, we are fixing problems first. And then the next plugin I introduced to the vocal chain is another EQ. I like analog emulation EQs a lot, and that's why I always use the SSL EQs for vocals. But again, you can use any EQ that you want. At this stage, what we're trying to do is shape the tone of the vocals. I've always pointed out all of these settings in all of my videos, and if you check other songs that I mix, it's pretty much the same thing. These are all frequency ranges that I've over the years recognized affects vocals the way they affect vocals and give the quality that I want. On the high frequencies, we are boosting up to 3.5 dB, around 16 kHz to introduce some brightness to the vocals. Now, one thing you need to bear in mind is different EQs will have different textures to the sound. The SSL will give me the SSL sound. So the highs from an SSL EQ would probably be different from Pro Q EQ. But the difference though is very subtle, but it's part of the sound. And then high mid here, we're doing up to -3 dB attenuation around 3 kHz with wide Q. There's like a 1 dB slope there. So a wide Q. Then for the low frequencies, some attenuation as well, up to -7 dB of attenuation around 710 Hz. This is also a wide Q, as you can see. This particular setting I think is very, very important for vocals. Depending on the recording, depending on the artist, depending on where it was recorded, I would usually find this like sort of muddiness around this frequency range, somewhere from 700 to 800, sometimes down to like 680. This is a very, very good EQ setting if you want to get like a rich tone in your vocals. And then for the low frequencies, we're doing another attenuation up to -5 dB attenuation around 200 Hz. This is without it. So let's do a quick A/B to listen to the EQ. So without it,
I gave you the best of me, now are you the best for me?
and then with it,
I gave you the best of me, now are you the best for me?
so the first thing you start to notice is the fact that we've lost a bit of gain on the vocals. That's because we've done a lot of attenuation. And the second thing you would notice, which is the most important part, is the fact that the vocal sounds way more refined. Now, you can actually decide to come to the output and do a makeup gain to level match your input, but I prefer not to do that with the EQ. I prefer to do that with the compressor. So let's go over to the next plugin in the chain, which is the CLE76. So what I'm going to be doing with this is essentially targeting picks, as well as putting back some of the gain that I've lost from the previous processing I did with the EQ. This is without it.
I gave you the best of me, now are you the best for me?
And then with the compressor.
I gave you the best of me, now are you the best for me?
Easily you can hear that there's a big level jump, and I'm not necessarily even level matching per se. I'm just giving me the amount of gain that I think I need for the rest of the processing. This is how I like to do it. But again, what we're doing here is just targeting picks, and the way the attack and release times for the 1176 works is sort of opposite to other compressors. So which means 1 is slow, 7 is fastest. Sometimes I will do a relatively fast attack around 5, and sometimes I'll actually do a very slow attack. But we're doing fast for this demonstration, so let's leave it at fast. But I always like to do a very fast release, because at this stage I'm not necessarily trying to introduce the compression sound. I'm just taming picks and using the output knob to give me some sort of gain to my signal.
I gave you the best of me.
Right, so when you look at the needle, you can see that it's moving when we are hitting the peaks. The 1176 also has a fixed threshold, so the more input you drive into the compressor, the more you get compression essentially. And then you have to use your output to set your gain. Oh, this is something I'm noticing. This is the newest version of Wave, so this has an auto makeup function as well. That's cool. I don't use any of these analog functions because these will introduce noise to your signal, so I always keep that. And then sometimes you can get a different texture when you use the bluey, but I like to use the blackie. Again, you can use any compressor you want at this stage. I want you to pay more attention to the type of plugins, not the brand of plugins that I'm using. So you can actually decide to use a C2, right, or any other compressor that you like, and work the way you understand that compressor. Now, the next plugin I like to introduce into the vocal chain is the Multiband compressor. In this case, I'm using the C6, as you can see, and this is another very important tool for tone shaping in my chain essentially. And I'm going to leave a link here as well on how to use this plugin from scratch. Essentially, what I like to do is set my crossover points like this: 10K and up to control the highs, 1.3K to 10K to control the, let's call it high mids. We have from 91 Hz to 1.3K to control the low mids. Then I just roll off everything below 91 Hz, as you can see here. So again, I'm using this to control the frequencies and the different crossover points that I've set, and also tone shaping essentially. For example, this is control the highs, right? Tone shaping basically. So let's do quick A/B actually. So without it,
I gave you the best of me, now are you the best for me?
and then after.
I gave you the best of me, now are you the best for me?
Once again, the first thing you will notice is the big level jump, right? We've lost a ton of gain, and that's due to the compression that we're doing at this stage. And I can choose to go to the output and add some gain with a multiband compressor. But just like before, I prefer to not do that here. I like to go into my next compressor because I like to compress in series, and that's where I would add the much needed gain that I need to actually just stabilize the performance in the mix essentially. So that leads us to the next compressor, which is the LA2A. This is where I do the main compression for the vocals in terms of leveling and all of that. So
I gave you the best of me.
Right, and I like to target anywhere between -3 to -5 dB of gain reduction, and then as usual set my gain to taste. This is also a very straightforward compressor to use. You can also use any compressor you like at this stage, but this is what I like to use. So let's do quicker AB. So without it,
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me?
we have a clean vocal, but the vocal is inside the mix, and we need to bring it up front. Compressor activated.
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me?
We still retain the clean sound, but now the vocal is all up in our face. That's what we want. Like I said, the LA2A is a very easy compressor to use. Probably that's why I like to use it, and I like the tone of the compressor as well. Basically, all you have to do is use the peak reduction knob to dial in the amount of gain reduction you want, and then your gain to set the desired gain that you want. I personally don't like to do level matching, as you can see. Some people like to do level matching, and if level matching works for you, awesome. But I don't do level matching. I just use my ears and make my decisions based on what I think will work for the record. Now, the last plugin on the dynamic section of this chain is typically another de-esser. Sometimes all of this processing will lead to some sharpness in the high frequencies, and this is what I use to control that. And I also sort of use this to control the warmth of the vocals. If I want the vocals to be very warm, then I would do a little bit more de-essing. I think this is a point in the chain where maybe something like a Soothe 2 would be a very good alternative for those people that like to use Soothe 2. So yeah, that's it. So let's listen to this. So without it,
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me?
and then with it,
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me?
you can hear that instantly the vocals sound less harsh, especially in the high frequencies, and it's just a little bit smoother. Some singers actually prefer to have their vocals shine and sound very, very airy, like the way Selena Gomez vocals will sound, that kind of stuff. I work with some female artists that prefer that. And if I'm working on this kind of song, I typically might not do this stage, all right? Or I'll do very little just to make sure we can still retain that very bright high frequencies that the artist want. But yeah, that's it.
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me?
Let's do a bit of a drastic de-essing here so we can hear how it affects the vocals.
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me? I gave you the best of me.
Yeah, that's too much. Now we're starting to lose clarity. But yeah, you don't want to do too much. You just want to use this to control or smoothen the highs a bit. Again, you can use any de-esser that you like. This is just for the purpose of demonstration and kind of just show you my process. And then once I'm done with this, I proceed to the time-based effects, which is a room reverb, our main reverb, and our delay. Again, you can use whatever reverb you like for your room reverb or for your main reverb, and you can use whatever delay you like. I typically like to use pure plate for my room reverb. You can use, again, whatever reverb you like, anyone will work. And for the main reverb, I like to use H reverb for lead vocals, and I like the Valhalla vintage reverb for background vocals. It has a very smooth texture to it. And for the stereo delay, I'm still stuck on using Comeback Kit for now. Still my favorite delay because I refused to try something else, and I also think it's the best delay because I've also refused to try something else. Especially for lead vocals, I like this for lead a lot, and I think maybe it's because of this Docker feature that you have here. But this is essentially a sidechain processing where anytime the vocal is playing, the delay docks, and when the vocal starts playing, it releases the delays, which I like. It just saves me a bit of time. One other thing I like to do on my effect access like this is have this EQ at the very top of the chain. We do high pass and low pass filter here just to control the reverb a little bit. The high pass will take out all of the muddy frequencies from the reverb, and the low pass will remove all of the very, very harsh frequencies from the reverb, and you get a very clean reverb sound. I do the same for the delay as well. So without all the time-based effects, this is what we have, right?
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me?
And then with the time-based effects,
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me? I didn't focus on the sign, so cause you be like ecstasy. Now I give you extra things.
Personally, I think when it comes to time-based effects, whatever decisions you make here will be based on personal tastes. It will probably also be based on the taste of the artist that you're working with. Because sometimes some artists will be like, hey, I don't want too much reverb in my vocals, or I don't want too much delay in my vocals. I've actually worked with somebody recently that did not want delay in their vocals at all. That's the kind of things you will deal with when you are working on other people's songs. Most of the decisions you will make will be based on personal preference. Mixing is very, very subjective. This is my process. This is how I build a vocal chain. I typically do this from scratch once every 3 or 4 years. Signal flow is pretty much the same. Try a different plugin, see how it affects the sound, see if it's giving me what I need to compete with what's happening in the industry. And once I get a combination of plugins that I like the sound of, I'll save that into a template, and that obviously speeds up my workflow. If you're interested in getting my mixing and matching template, I'm going to leave a link below. You get a template that already has the lead vocal chain set up, the background vocal chain set up, all the routing for the effects boxes, everything set up, including the mastering chain, right? So if you're interested, I'm going to leave a link below for that. And you can also get my vocal presets from that link as well. So yeah, this is how I build my vocal chain, and I hope this was helpful to at least one person today. And if you'd like to book my services for mixing and mastering, I'm going to leave a link below to the engineers page as well, so you can book my services, or hit me up on Instagram at BennyMacaulay.db. My 50% off promo is still ongoing till the end of November when you book exclusively on the engineers platform. If you want to have your song mixed and mastered, or you know anybody that would like to have their song mixed and mastered, hit me up. All right, so that's it for now. I shall see you on the next one. Benny Macaulay out.
I gave you the best of me. Now are you the best for me? I didn't focus on the sign, so cause she be like ecstasy. Now I give you extra dance. Girl, you for my door. I didn't focus on the sign, so cause she be like ecstasy. Now I give you extra dance.